Welcome to Impact Leadership with Ferris-Ockwell. We chat with inspiring leaders who are doing business differently, shining a light on the change makers who are revolutionising the idea of leadership and showing us how and why profit, progress and purpose are all equally important.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm here today with Carly. Carly's the founder of Sprowt, and Sprowt is a marketing agency for purpose-driven businesses. And I'm really excited to chat with Carly about all things purpose-driven and all things setting up a business and being a founder and being a female founder and what that means. So, Carly, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today, Fran. So I'm Carly, I'm the founder of Sprowt. Sprowt was set up in March this year. And as you said, it's a marketing consultancy that helps purpose-driven brands. So brands that really care about the triple bottom line. So people, planet, and profit. We help them stand out in the sea of sameness and scale. And what I do is my background is very much in building big, memorable brands. So what I'm doing is taking those tried and tested methods, but applying them with a challenger lens. So essentially taking the good bits, ripping up the rule book and saying, well, how can I take these principles and help the businesses that actually really care about the world stand out and grow? So I suppose Sprout came about because last year I woke up. So I spent the last few years working with brands to try and get them to change what they're doing. So really going, okay, this is what the consumer wants. We're seeing more and more people actually going, oh, we want to be supporting brands. We want to be buying from brands that actually care about the world and give back. So it's more than just making profit. And I was working with these companies and getting absolutely nowhere. So last year, and I think as a lot of people, I started to really reflect, well, actually, what are my values? What is my purpose as a human being? Like, what really excites me? What gets me fired up? And then I started really researching different brands out there, what people were doing in the sustainability space, what incredible technological advances were happening. And I went, well, it's kind of now or never. Let's create this marketing consultancy that can help these brands. So yeah, it's early days, but it's exciting.
That's so exciting. That kind of process of going through the last 12 months, which have been horrific for everybody, and really reflecting on what's important to you, what brands particularly inspired you. Were there any that kind of made you really want to take the leap and do this?
I think there's been a number of them. So and I think to prefixes this as well, I think COVID has very much changed the way people consume and how they purchase as well. So D2C, so selling direct to consumer, has seen a massive spike. And I was reading something this morning that it's going to be around worth about 120 billion in the UK alone by the end of this year. So I think the playing field changed. So I started seeing all these companies. So there's an amazing company called EO, which produces leggings and activewear from recycled sea material. So recycled plastic that washes, or plastic that washes up on beaches, they then change it and convert it into clothes. So I kind of started seeing companies like this, and I started seeing incredible coffee companies that were making capsules that were recyclable and could break down in compost. And I kind of went, well, there's these amazing brands. Let's start doing them. Let's start helping them grow.
Fantastic. So it's all about moving away from this kind of big corporate, all about profit approach to the triple bottom line. And that idea of direct to consumers is really interesting as well. So effectively, if I'm understanding this right, that's about cutting out the middleman and having a relationship between the brand and the consumer. Am I on the right track with that?
Absolutely. It's kind of operating as a sales channel, but it is so much more than a sales channel. So yes, you'll be able to sell directly on your website, but it also gives you this amazing opportunity to learn who your customer is, trial different things, research different products, like different marketing hooks, and seeing what your customer wants. So I kind of see it as a way of really speeding up your innovation pipeline, because you're able to say, hey, customer, that I can have this one-to-one conversation with, what do you think about X? What do you think about Y? And also being able to nurture the relationships that you have with them. So starting to look at the data, seeing what are they coming back to, what do they want, what do they want to see from me, and helping to, I suppose, make more profitable conversations and decisions.
And like, if you were to give a top tip as to how brands could do that, like one thing that they could do to allow them to have a conversation with their customers, what would you say that would
I
be?
would say just do it. I think we spend so much of our time hiding away from the actual customer, whereas what we do need to do is just reach out, ask their opinions. Don't be afraid to say, what do you think about this? I'm a big believer in creating smallish kind of little community sections where you can test new products on them, get their feedback. We in the olden days, marketing, it was kind of the first 1,000 people. They're your most crucial people if you want to build a really successful brand. So taking that same kind of approach, that these are your loyalists, these are the people who will tell you what they think. If you change a formulation or you change something, they will be the first people to let you know. So it's actually talk to them and listen to them and refine what you're doing with them.
See, this kind of speaks to what we were talking just before this recording started about being human, being yourself. And I've come from a kind of career of having lots of jobs and working for organisations to then suddenly being my own boss and having my own business. And I've found that transition from being the face of a company to being myself and representing my own personality quite challenging. So, and one of the things that really draws me to Sprout and to you, Carly, is that you are yourself and you're human, and I think that makes it quite a warm brand to work with, and it certainly makes you very, very approachable. But it sounds like brands that you're working with are also taking that approach, that they're also trying to be human, asking the customers what they want, and admitting that they don't know everything and that they're fallible and flawed. What would your advice be to people in that kind of sector of like being yourself? How would you kind of support your clients or support the people that you're working with to embrace their personality and their brand?
I think this comes down to having a really defined like DNA that comes through the business. So it's your core architecture. It's how you live and breathe. So it's how you make the decisions. So for example, one of my pillars is being human, and everything I have to do has to approach that test. So that's the way I speak to clients. It's the way I conduct meetings. It's the way I market, where I choose to do my marketing, how I deliver it. Everything is about being human. And as I grow, it's going to very much dictate how the policies that I put in place for my teams. Am I ensuring their mental health is being looked after? Am I ensuring that they've got lives and they've got families and if they don't, they just have a life. So I want to create an environment that really stands true to that, I suppose, that pillar. And I think the difference, and I call them DNA rather than values. And in some ways they're similar, but I found using the word values, they've just become really associated with words on a wall that you pull out at a job interview and you kind of shove on your website, but they don't actually mean anything. Whereas I think when you start calling it DNA, it's your beating heart of your business. And I think when it comes to being authentic, you can tell the difference if a company is really living and breathing their DNA. Every different component, wherever you want to interact with them, will feel like that brand, that company, and that will come to life. And I think that's a lot where the authenticity comes through.
Yeah, so that speaks to like every strategy they have, every employee they have, every interaction those employees have with their customers and the wider audience. It's all about their human DNA and the thing that makes them a human business. So you mentioned to me earlier, you had this great phrase, science plus art plus heart, which I've written down. Can you talk to us about that and tell me what that means and what that means for Sprout?
Absolutely. And I think it was really interesting. We were just talking about earlier about having the difference between working for someone and having your own brand and really trying to find your voice. And this has actually been something, despite being a marketeer and despite this being my job, it's something I personally have struggled with. It's really to find out how I can show up differently in a unique way that is true to me. And in the last few months, I've definitely found myself gearing over. If I'm nervous or I'm fearful, I directly go into corporate jargon type speak and I will start writing like a robot. And I've been lucky enough, I've got a coach who is very, very sharp at pulling up actually when I'm doing that and when I'm recognizing it. And I suppose that comes down to what you were talking in a roundabout way of saying, well, art plus science plus heart. Yes, there's absolute strategy, and you need a watertight strategy. You need a vision. You need a roadmap. You need a plan how you're going to get there. You need the art through the creativity. How are you showing up? How are you really stopping people in their tracks and coming to life, and bringing your brand to life in a visual, in a storytelling way? But I think the one component that we don't talk about enough, that is the fundamental thing that helps brands grow, is this idea of being a person, and its heart, and its mindset, and it's about energy, and it's about that, I suppose, that drive and that resilience to keep going. And I think all three are absolutely fundamental if you're going to build a business. And for me, I think that's where Sprout's slightly different. We don't shy away from it. We openly share the challenging. We talk through it. We operate in a consultancy. So I'm about to launch an incubator in September.
Fantastic.
And one of the things that I'm doing is, it's going to be, it's all about brand strategy, and it's about building out your roadmap, and it's making sure that if you're looking for funding, we've got funding experts who are going to help you with your pitch, retail experts who are really, really honing how you're going to approach the buyer. But we've also got life coaches, we've also got cycle coaches, and we've got coaches in there so you can understand, well, what are your limiting beliefs? What are things showing up that are really blocking you and stopping you from really achieving your goals?
What an incredible thing. So you're going to be supporting, I'm assuming, startup purpose-driven organizations with this incubator support. So how would somebody who is running it, or who is thinking about founding a startup, how would they get involved with that? What would they need to do, and what would that journey look like for them?
So as in terms of what would happen within the program?
Yeah. How they would apply, and then what would happen during the program.
So head to sprout.uk, or send me a message at carly@sprout.uk, and that's spelt with a W because the U was taken and I couldn't get the URL. So we're now Sprout with a W. And what essentially will happen on that journey is, I think there's a fundamental difference between selling a product and building a brand. Most people sell products, and that's where, I suppose, where it stops. You'll sell a few, and then a competitor will come in, and the customer will jump, and they'll jump ship, and there'll be something shiny in you, and you'll be instantly forgotten about. So I specialize in building really memorable brands that have customers coming back to them time and time and time again. Brands that whenever you see them, you're like, oh, I know what that brand stands for. It's brands that really stop you in your tracks, and you have an affinity with them, and they make you feel something. So we take brands from being a product into a brand. So at the end of the incubator, the desire is you have a really, really tight brand strategy. You've got a tight marketing plan. You have a tight, real understanding of where you need to go to get to the next level. So you'll have worked with a retail expert to hone your pitch. You would have worked with a D2C specialist to really think about your e-commerce site, and how do you optimize it for conversions, plus how do you make sure that you're having that constant interaction with your customer. And then if you are going down the funding route, which I think more and more companies are, and it's becoming much more accessible and attainable, looking for different ways of getting funding, we will have helped you develop that pitch in order to get in front of investors.
I mean, that support is invaluable. That's a huge offer for startups. I work with organizations all the time who have, they might have been around for a year or two, and that fundamental stuff about who they are and what their brand stands for just isn't there. And if that doesn't dictate every decision they make within the business, then quickly they'll start to lose track, and they'll go off in different directions towards shiny things that are a distraction, and they lose sight of what they're doing and why they're doing it. So
100%. And I think this is the classic trap that entrepreneurs fall into in many purpose-driven brands, because they're so excited about how this product or how their brand can change the world and have a bigger impact. They've got a gazillion ideas. I was speaking to one founder last week, and he's like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And I was like, oh, hang on a second. These are amazing, but how do they fit into the one thing? How do you make sure that you're showing up consistently? How do you make sure that people can start recognizing you and having an affinity with you? It's actually being much more simplistic, pulling it back into the one thing, and then building a ladder. Yes, you can do all those amazing things, but do it in a strategic way.
that one thing is key, isn't it? What is that? What's your why? What's your strategic vision? What are your objectives? All of those kind of things are all about finding out why do you exist? Like, what is it that you're trying to do, and stick to it, stick to that thing. And it's so hard when there's so much kind of opportunity, and you get that entrepreneurial flow, and you see opportunities everywhere, and there's, like, you know, potential everywhere. And then you think, oh my goodness, well, if I stick to this one thing, if this isn't the right thing to stick to, and that other idea that I've decided to abandon was the right thing to stick to, then I've lost that opportunity. And it's really hard, but it's all about having, I think, it's about having faith in yourself and your idea and your vision, that you can make it a success, and then it will grow, and it will, to use your gardening metaphor, will sprout. I love that. And on the subject of gardening metaphors, I noticed that you have 3 different packages and 3 different ways that people can work with you on your website, all of which are gardening related. So I love that. It's fantastic. Could you talk us through the different ways, and please use your gardening terminology when you do it, because it's great.
Absolutely. I think this kind of also ties back into, given the lockdown, I learned to garden last year. So I think I had that at the back of my mind when I was coming up with the idea for Sprout. So I've got, oh gosh, I'm going to make sure I get them in the right order. So the greenhouse is the incubator program. So that's a 6-month program that's going to take you from product to brand, and have a roadmap for really expansion, and just bring your brand to life in a way that really expedites your growth. And I just think with that one as well, the most important thing, it's community based as well, because I think that it ties in with the heart kind of pillar that we spoke about before, that it's learning and speaking to other people, and sharing vulnerabilities and pitfalls and challenges that can really help you on your mission. I'm actually lucky enough to be in a container myself, and it's been so invaluable. Those days where you're like, shit, this is really hard, you can have someone lean into you and just say, keep going, you're doing the right thing. Or when you are a solo founder, having someone to bounce off an idea and going, is this harebrained, does this actually make sense? And it's been so invaluable for me. So that was a big component that I'm building into this program as well. So that is the greenhouse. The next one is the fertilizer, which is more of a one-to-one consultancy type thing. So really helping you unpick your one big marketing challenge, or whatever that might be. So it's working with you on, do you have a problem with your launch? Do you need a second opinion on how you're going to launch this brand or this product or this new product under your portfolio? It could be around, how do you look at your end-to-end customer journey to really pull out those magic moments that are unique to your brand, to make them come alive in a way that you only can. It could be around, what are you needing to focus on your website? What, from a brand perspective, are you really showing up in a way that's in line with your DNA? So it could be anything and everything. And I don't claim to be an expert in everything. So I'm not a social media expert. I am not an e-commerce specialist, but I've got an amazing network of people who are. So I operate as a collective. So if we're talking about this and it becomes clear that your challenge is an e-com, D2C, technical, like you're not converting as much as you should be, I can then help and pull in someone who can really help you. So I'm supposed I'm there as your kind of co-founder in a terminology, to be there to be your supporting person to help guide you through the process. And then the third one is project related. So if you came to me and said, Carly, I want to launch this program want to launch this product with a bang, we can then think about, well, what's your creative idea? How are you going to show up? What can you hook? And then we can do end-to-end execution.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think, so my observations since I've been in business is I've worked with some great people in the marketing space, but I don't know anything about marketing at all. Like, it's just not my thing. And it seems to me that you've got that real strategic oversight, and you kind of understand, you get under the skin of what a brand is trying to achieve and who they are, and then you help them to identify the best route forward for their particular purpose or their particular project. And the long-term vision, it's not just about putting together a social media strategy for a particular piece of, a particular launch, whatever it might be. It's about really embedding that brand identity into what they do. So
just on that point, Fran, I think that's really, really crucial, just because impact is one of my core DNA values as well. because there is absolutely, to your point, no point doing anything unless it's going to shift the dial from a return on investment standpoint. And my big question, I probably drive people mad by saying, is why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? What are we hoping to achieve? And trying to dig down into the actual problem, because often what looks like the problem on the surface isn't actually the real challenge. So we spend a lot of time going deep into it, and we could be having a conversation. It might actually be a marketing, on the surface it looks like a marketing problem, but it could be more of a distribution, it could be more of a price thing. And that's where I look to kind of the collective of brains that I work with to say, hang on, I need to pull you and Fran or someone else to help solve that problem.
Absolutely. So really having that kind of external objective devil's advocate, I suppose, to just really get under the skin and question those decisions that as founders sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees. You know, we're like, I don't know what my brand looks like to somebody on the outside, because to me, I've just looked at it so much it doesn't make sense anymore, you know. So having an objective opinion where you can come in and say, actually, I don't think that's not really the problem, or your reasons for doing this perhaps not what you think they are. Really kind of, like you mentioned, acting in a kind of co-founder way earlier, and I think that's a really insightful way of looking at it. So it's not that kind of traditional customer client provider relationship where, you know, everything the customer says is right. Actually, you're there to provide like an objective challenge, because it's going to get the best results to your clients.
100%. And I think with that, what makes the partnership real, it's because it's impact driven. So the only clients I work with care about people, planet, and also profit, because I fundamentally believe you need profit in order to make the impact. So it's not a traditional supplier client relationship where it's just a money exchange. I know that if I help you and your brand grow, that's going to make a better difference to the world. And that's ultimately why I'm doing this, and why I want to leave this world a better place than I came to it. I want to create a better world for my son. I want to create a better world for that if he has a family in the future. That's the impact I personally want to create, and that's my why. So I think that has then a different dynamic. So I'm not just looking to try and make as much money from the clients I work with. I'm looking to really, really help them make a positive impact in the world.
That's music to my ears, and I think that's the future of business, really. Have you got any examples of clients or businesses more broadly who do that really well? So it's, you know, they communicate their impact in terms of their wider social environmental impact, as well as just how much profit they're making.
I think if we would have had this conversation about 3 weeks ago, I would have said Brewdog, because I actually think they kind of, what's happened aside, I think they did a very, very good job at constantly saying, okay, this is why we're doing it. This is what we're existing. We're going to plant these forests, and we're going to deliver X percent. We're going to become climate neutral. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I think that was really important. And that put a lot of faith in myself when I was deciding to actually, there are businesses that want to do this. I think my fundamental problem now with Brewdog is it's come down to purpose washing. And this is a really interesting point. And I'm calling it purpose washing because I think it's more than greenwashing. Because for me, greenwashing is very much environmental and sustainability. And then, but you've got the whole people and the human side. And what's really come out from what's happened with Brewdog is they held people and planet at the heart. And what they were doing on the surface was not what they were doing under the scenes. So I think, sadly, I'm hoping that they pull it out. I'm hoping they stop, they listen, and then most importantly, act. But I actually think that Brewdog is the first, but it won't be the last company that gets called out. I think people have had the space, they've had the time last year to really evaluate their feelings, their values, and what they care about. And if a company that they're working for isn't laddering up to what they want and what they claim, they're going to be called out.
Yeah, I was really saddened to read what was going on at Brewdog. And I think if you're an employee in an organisation that claims to be purpose driven, it almost makes it harder to speak out, because, you know, everybody perceives this organisation to be, you know, the holy grail of purpose driven organisations, and underneath the surface it's the absolute opposite of that. It's a real shame, and we see it, you know, like you said, we see it a lot of times with greenwashing, when you get, you know, huge corporate multinational companies who claim to be doing something really environmentally sound, and you think, I'm not quite convinced about that. But with the likes of Brewdog, it does kind of draw attention to the fact that this kind of idea of purpose washing is probably going to become, I hope it will be called out more often, but it's certainly becoming something that will hold a lens to, I would say. It's very sad. So how would you define the difference between purpose driven and just, I guess, non-purpose driven or generally for-profit organizations? How do you draw that distinction?
I think it comes down to, you have on your bottom line, you're not just focused on profits, you are focused on the other things. So I actually have a podcast myself, which is called Sproutcast, and I had an interview with Hannah Carter, who's the CEO and founder of Oggs, this week. So they have created the world's first egg alternative. So they were the first vegan cakes that were available in supermarkets, and now they create using aquafaba. I never say that word right, but it's the kind of the material in chickpeas. So they've created this product that can be used as an egg substitute, and they measure the impact. Profit is important, but the main thing she was thinking about is CO2 emissions, what they've saved, how many eggs they've saved, how many chickens that haven't been kind of pushed through to create eggs. I read something that the average chicken in the wild, it produces between like 10 and 12 eggs a year, and with commercial farming, that's like 1,000, 500 through 1,000. So it's significant. So that's the kind of pressure that we're putting on the natural world. So I think companies like Oggs are an amazing example that profit is so important, because it can make change happen faster. It allows her to have a bigger voice. It allows her to really push policy change and all of that. But it is about other things. So it's making sure, you're not looking at profit in isolation. It has to be part of
a wider picture. And that's so interesting as well, that it's really key, I think, for me as well, to emphasize that profit is important. It's, you can't do very much in terms of making change happen without it. My background's in the charity sector, and so we scrimped and we saved and we relied a lot on short-term funding and grant funding, and the idea of generating a profit was almost kind of frowned upon, or we had to kind of come up with convoluted and imaginative ways to generate profit that could cross-subsidize our charity work. And it was really important. The work that we were doing was really important, but in terms of making an impact, we just didn't have the clout or the momentum behind us that we would have done if we were a purpose-driven company who had that kind of speed and the resources, fundamentally, to really shout for change and to utilize services like Sprowt to really shout and communicate about what they're doing and how well they're making an impact on the wider environment and a wider society. So thank you for doing the work you're doing. It's incredible, and I really look forward to seeing more of it. What's next for Sprowt, Carly? What's on the horizon?
We are sponsoring a festival next week. So we are sponsoring the D2C festival, which is for challenger food and drink businesses. So we're going to be helping out there and spreading the work. And then for me, it's just helping as many purpose-driven brands as possible really get noticed, get traction, and win the hearts and minds of customers. Like, for me, I feel the time is right. I think people have really woken up, and they're actively looking and they're actively considering now. Veganism is something that, if you look at how it was 2-3 years ago, when it was considered a fad, to now, I believe it's going to be table stakes for any new beauty product coming in, any new food and drink. You're going to have a vegan alternative. So I just think there is such movement, there's such momentum. People are really waking up to the fact that climate change is real, it's happening, and it's happening at an accelerated pace. So we need to hold ourselves responsible and accountable for making a difference.
Oh, that's fantastic, and great words to finish on. Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful to talk to you. How can everybody get in touch with you if they want to know more about Sprowt, or if they want you to help them with their own branding and marketing?
If you head to www.sprowt.uk, that's Sprowt spelt with a W, so SPROWT. I'm dyslexic, so I'm hoping I'm spelling that right. Or send me an email at carly@sprowt.uk.
Fantastic, that's great. Carly, thank you so much for your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Fran.
Take care.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Impact Leadership, don't forget to subscribe and head to our website for more great content.